we're gonna use this to kind of pivot on to the Colts' early season outlook. I know we talked about this a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, but now the picture is a little bit more clear, and so I want to revisit this topic, especially at the Colts, or at the quarterback position, and talking about Ballard. I also want to say before we get underway here that that articles from Horseshoe Heroes and Pro Football Rumors have said that Chris Ballard is likely returning to Indy this season. Irsay has kind of put his stamp on him as well, going in.
But he wouldn't have had a end of the season press conference today.
Right, exactly.
He wouldn't have gotten to that point if he wasn't returning.
Right. So and yeah, I think what I was gonna say too earlier is that I think he's had a lot of solid drafts. He's made a lot of solid moves where I think he's built up the equity. It's just now that equity is wearing thin. So we'll see how this year he really needs to go out and go.
Well, and then also look at it. He was really dealt a pretty bad hand early on.
Yeah.
With the sudden retirement of Andrew Luck.
Right, but I also think you can make the argument it's not argument, it's basically fact that he was set back years with the retirement of Andrew Luck, but at the same time, his moves after that, especially here recently, have not done him any favors in getting out of that hole.
Or maybe this was the long game all along. He knew Matt Ryan was washed up, brought him in, and he knew that this was going to be a better
The only way we
QB
could get a
class.
first, the only way we could get a higher pick is if he brought in a washed-up quarterback.
Maybe he's playing chess while we're all sitting around playing checkers.
Reverse it. We're playing checkers while he's playing chess.
I know. I said it in a.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't realize.
I said maybe he's playing chess while we're all sitting around playing checkers.
Never mind. I'm the problem. It's me. as the Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
song goes.
Instead of saying we're playing checkers while he's playing chess, I just said
okay.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute, hold on. But yeah, so looking at this offseason, I kind of wanted to throw this out here. What would be in our opinion, would be the dream head coach quarterback situation going into the 2023 season? For me, first, as much as I want to look at quarterback first, obviously the first domino to fall is who the Colts get for head coach. First and foremost, Jim Harbaugh should be the only retread the Colts pursue. I still think it's unlikely that they get him, although the more I hear about stuff, the more I think it's more of a possibility. I don't think ultimately it happens, but because of course, on the one hand, you have a team, the Colts are a team with a top 4 pick, with a familiar team with a team you're familiar with. That's got to be tantalizing for a guy like Harbaugh. But on the other hand, if he doesn't get the perfect situation, he can go back to Michigan, where he's got a college football playoff contender, a team that in the way too early, top 25 that ESPN released was number 3. Yeah, so they're going to be high up there again. The Colts should still look into it, but I also don't think they should exhaust all their resources, and I don't think they should let it keep them from interviewing other quality candidates. I've seen others like Leslie Frazier and Jim Caldwell thrown out there, and that for me...
Why bring back Jim Caldwell?
Right, exactly.
That failed the first time.
Those would be worst-case scenarios, in my opinion. The only defensive coordinator I want the Colts to pursue is DeMeco Ryans, the 49ers. San Francisco was first in yards allowed per game and points per game in the regular season. He's young. He's a former player that comes from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree that, oh, by the way, could potentially pluck any, who has an offense that literally now has 3 quarterbacks that you would consider viable starters in Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Brock Purdy. And, oh, by the way, DeMeco Ryans could pluck some of those offensive guys to make it easier to plug in a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson should the Colts, worst case scenario, miss out on a Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. The best case scenario for me would be for Indy to go with an offensive coordinator who has worked with some of the best quarterback talent in the league: Eric Bieniemy of the Chiefs, Ken Dorsey of the Bills, Brian Callahan of the Bengals. Any of those guys would have me feeling somewhat comfortable with whoever the Colts draft at quarterback this year. My vote would be Ken Dorsey. I give him the slight edge over Brian.
I can get that one.
I give him the slight edge over Brian Callahan, and I don't know how easy Bieniemy would get, so which is why I have him. I have him below Dorsey. I would rather have Bieniemy, but because Bieniemy's kind of always been in conversations for head
There's some
coach.
red flags
Yeah,
there.
so I don't know what's going on there. So that's the only reason why I put Dorsey
Yeah.
ahead. But I think a guy like Ken Dorsey, because the thing is with like a guy like Harbaugh or a guy like Ken Dorsey, that kind of softens the blow of um, who you might worst case scenario get at the quarterback position. As far as the quarterback position goes, the mock drafts I've been looking at, I will admit it was when I prepared the outline on Sunday, so the Colts weren't locked in at 4, so all the mock drafts had the Colts at 5, but I had one from NBC Sports that has Colts taking Kentucky quarterback Will Levis. There's another one from CBS that has the Colts taking Levis with Stroud still on the board, which big
Oh,
no for that one. And then another one
yeah.
has the Colts taking Stroud at 5, which
Okay.
without anything impeding them. Of the teams ahead of the Colts in the draft, just the Texans are likely to take a quarterback, which bodes well for the Colts. However, that means there are 3 spots in which the Colts could be leapfrogged, or sorry, that'd be 2 spots where the Colts could be leapfrogged. With the Seahawks, which the Seahawks I probably could take off there because after getting the playoffs with Geno, they're probably not going to leapfrog to get a quarterback. But you also have the Raiders, Falcons, Panthers looming with solid to good ammo to potentially move up. Heck, with the picks the Texans acquired from Cleveland, I wouldn't rule them out from doing something crazy to move back up and have a couple of picks. But that's why I think it's important for the Colts to get a head coach with a proven record of developing elite quarterback talent, so that it kind of softens the blow. All this to say, to circle back and say who I think my dream scenario it would be um, Ken Dorsey with whoever the Colts don't get, whoever the Texans don't get, between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I think, me personally, I would like to see Ken Dorsey and C.J. Stroud as the two leaders in the organization going forward into 2023.
So yeah, obviously Jim Harbaugh is a dream, and Irsay does like his boys, and apparently Harbaugh is one of his boys. Um, but I don't know. Like watching Harbaugh's offenses at Michigan
Not really featured
isn't super in,
quarterback. Yeah, they haven't really
or
needed.
the passing game too much. I guess which is it's a good that's okay when you have a running back like Jonathan Taylor ready to go, but you need an offensive line that can handle that. And right now the Colts don't have that. Um, I don't think I would rule Jim Harbaugh out, just because it is one of those things like I think he could he would love the Jim Harbaugh would love the attention he would get as being coming back to Indianapolis where he was crowned the comeback kid, and being able to help lead this organization, a guy that's in the Ring of Honor, like one of the originals of the Ring of Honor. There's some draw there to that. You do play inside, so you don't have to worry about playing in the elements all the time. Um, so there's credence there. But I'm more in line of let's go out and hire a young guy, somebody younger that can connect with these players. That seems to be the trend. We've seen it, and we've seen it with success throughout the league. Now, the Indy Star did report today that the Colts did request the ability to talk to and interview 4 different coordinators. One of them being Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris. He has a retread a little bit. He spent some time as the head coach with the Buccaneers for 3 seasons. There was also Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. He's old. He's the oldest guy on the list, age 50. But the Lions had a pretty good defense this year. The Lions were actually a very surprised team. This isn't the last time you're going to hear about the Lions. And then also Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. He's a younger guy that really kind of helped resurrect Jared Goff's career and turn the Lions into one of the top offenses in the league this year. Trying to see right here, what was the 5th in scoring? They were 3rd in yards and 5th in scoring, despite not having an elite quarterback at the helm. That's what's quoted here in the article. But here comes my candidate that I didn't know about him until now. And well, not until earlier today. But looking at what he's done, kind of exciting. Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's got a lot of connections also to former Colts coaches. He actually spent a couple years with Frank Reich in San Diego. He was an offensive quality control coach under Reich in 2014 and 2015. Then he worked his way up under former Indianapolis Colts coordinator Nick Sirianni, and he's also apparently been requested to interview for the Texans job. But I mean, this guy has helped build an electric Eagles offense that finished second in the league in yards and scoring this season. So he knows how to kind of he's kind of an offense he's an offensive mind that can really work well. I mean, he is only 37, so he's about my age, a little older than me, but for some reason I just feel like that is the new trend to go younger, and we have seen that it works. Like I said, I mean, look, Sean McVay, yeah, he's had his ups and his downs out in LA. Kyle Shanahan out there in San Francisco. I mean, it works, and these guys are connecting with the players better, and they also understand that they've seen what changes have been made in football, and they've adapted to those changes, whereas these older guys that just keep getting passed around the league are kind of stuck in their ways. And we're seeing that shift also in college football as well, with the older coaches kind of being pushed out a little bit in the coaching carousel, and these new young up and comers that have been able to adapt with different things like NIL and the transfer portal. So just I think a younger mind might be the best route to go with this one. And I don't know. I'm really, but I do like your pick of Ken Dorsey as well. He fits that mold of what you'd be looking for. Another guy to keep an eye on that has started getting some tread as far as being requested for interviews is the Giants offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, um, which is so interesting because I remember watching Mike
Yeah.
Kafka at Northwestern.
Right.
I mean, it's like, geez,
Yeah.
how old am
Right.
I?
No, I get that because I feel the same way about him and like Kellen Moore and Byron Leftwich. Like all those
Yes,
guys, I'm like, I remember when
yes.
Byron Leftwich was at Marshall. I remember,
When he was this, I met him when he was when he was the backup quarterback for the
yeah.
Jaguars.
We're getting old,
But
man.
I know it's just like, geez, Louise. But really, I think my two top guys looking like Ken Dorsey would definitely be really good just because of what you've seen him help build in Buffalo, and the growth of oh my God, Allen. What's his first
Josh
name?
Allen.
Josh Allen. There's too many. I was thinking Jared, but I was like, nope, that's that old defensive
Yeah.
end that used to wear number
Yep.
69. Um,
Vikings.
but yep, but Ken Dorsey, Shane Steichen, even a Kellen Moore. I don't know why anybody's not really looking at him. I feel like maybe he's more in line to potentially take over for McCarthy down in Dallas eventually. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
Some of these younger guys are what I'm looking at. And then as far as my quarterback, I want CJ Stroud. To be honest, when I look at what CJ Stroud has been able to do throughout his college career and just this past year alone, everybody will go, well, look, he had a bad game against Northwestern. Yeah, but guess what, guys? The wind was blowing over 50 miles an hour consistently in that game, and it's in Chicago, where it's even windier up there. And yeah, he didn't throw for very many yards that game. He had a terrible game. No, but he rushed. He ran the ball very well. He adapted to the environment. He adapted his game. He switched it up, and he still led the team to a victory. He, yeah, I guess the game against Michigan, he didn't look great, but Ohio State didn't look great all around in that game. It wasn't just him. But then to come out and play the way he did against Georgia, he made Georgia look beatable. And the Georgia we just saw against TCU looked completely unbeatable. I mean, Georgia majority of the season looked unbeatable, and Ohio State, many people didn't give them a chance. And CJ Stroud really led them in that game, and then he pushed them down the field after Marvin Harrison Jr. went out with the concussion. So I just feel like his grind, his ability to adapt, his accuracy, he's accurate on short passes, intermediate and deep passes. I I feel like he has the tools necessary. Oh, and he can also take off and run. So he kind of is the full package there. I feel like he has the tools to have a more successful career in the NFL than Bryce Young. Bryce Young at times, it this is just my personal opinion, but it felt like he's kind of disappeared in games. If anybody wants to disagree with that, fine. Tell please tell me where I might be missing where in that assessment. Um, and that also might be because I didn't watch as much Alabama as I did Ohio State. But just from seeing different, like how Alabama played this year, it just he didn't really seem to step up to me as that leader when Alabama needed a leader. As the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, you would expect him to really, when Alabama hit that a little bit of a rough patch and lost a couple of games, somebody he should have stepped up. Now it looked like he probably did in the bowl game. He showed great leadership by saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to declare for the draft, but I'm not opting out. I'm going to play." So you have that. But I think if I had to pick a quarterback that I would feel the most comfortable with handing the keys over to right now, it would be CJ Stroud. I am not drafting Will Levis. Will Levis is one of those guys to me that is he's going to go to the combine and he's going to perform at high levels at the combine. But he's good at in combine measurables and all of that. But when it comes to actual game, yeah, he was okay, he was good. He was, but you got to look at their offense. It was a very run oriented offense. And at down the stretch, he had trouble with interceptions. And that would be the time where you're like, look, you should be improving as the season goes on, getting into more of a rhythm with your wide receivers. He looked to be very struggling. Once the competition increased, Will Levis's accuracy and trouble with turnovers all kind of like his accuracy went down and his trouble with turnovers rose, and it came to a head. So I'm not as a big a fan of him, and I don't understand the talk of Anthony Richardson either. He's an athlete, but I think people are more talking about Anthony Richardson because when the Colts were originally kind of hovering around that, are they going to be in the playoffs? Are they not going to be in the
He was
playoffs?
there. He was going to be there
He
like
was he
15
was
or
there,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah. But let's not even put him in the conversation now for a top four pick.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think the Colts have to trade up. I don't know.
I'm
I
just
guess I
real
mean
scared because like there's a
it's
team like Carolina's got a lot of draft capital and they can like I saw we'll get into it more as the draft gets closer, but like there's a lot that I saw of that from like what Carolina has where like or
yeah.
where they can move up and like because I mean yes Sam Darnold played better towards the end of the year, yes they just drafted Matt Corral last year, but like at the same time if they've got an opportunity to trade up with the Bears or the Cardinals to potentially get that next pick, then I think they could potentially go for it. So I mean, like all the
Well, if
teams,
that happens, I guess if that happens, I mean maybe you suck for one more year and then you try to get Caleb Williams next year.
yeah,
And but the if that happens, look, there are still players around there that the Colts really need help at with. Like a guy like a Peter Skoronsky out of Northwestern would be a huge help on the offensive line. So I mean, I'm just saying there are other options there if the Colts for some reason every team in front of them, like the Bears and like if they missed out on the top two quarterbacks, I'm not gonna or maybe at that point, maybe if you do like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, you just trade back
right with
as well
Carolina,
and you
yeah.
pick up more picks as at that point. But I mean, a Peter Skoronsky is not a bad consolation prize whatsoever.
No, no. Look, and it'll one last thing, and you said something potentially controversial. I'm going to take the onus away from you, so the comment section can pick on me for saying this. Look, I'd rather the Colts take a flyer on Stetson Bennett in a later round, then take Will
I even said
Levis.
that off air. I
Because
said that off air.
the reason I say that is because I think it's funny to me that a quarterback can play surrounded by NFL caliber talent and play against NFL caliber talent in the SEC and against Ohio State in the playoff, and all of a sudden, like I get, obviously those kids aren't in the NFL, but then to then say, well, that guy is at best a backup is always crazy to me, especially with all the success that he's had. You know,
It's because he doesn't have the measurables that everybody just screams and
right.
shouts about.
So
Again, it comes back to,
if the Colts were to
can
get
a quarterback win?
right. And if the Colts get a guy, heck, I'm okay with, like, offensive coordinator for the Lions, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, even, who were around Goff and Hurts this year. Or if they get Dorsey or Callahan or Bieniemy or whoever, I would rather have, Dorsey and, I would rather have Dorsey and Bennett than Dorsey
Oh my
and
gosh, that would be, yeah,
Levitt. You know what I mean? Or Levis. So
yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Will Levis, so we'll see what happens. But
And honestly, are these teams as big of fans of them? I mean, what we see is the everybody falls in love with the hot board that Mel Kiper puts out every year, and he lives and dies, it seems like, by those measurables. He's that prototypical. He loves the prototypical quarterback, and it's like, but look, the prototypical quarterback, just because he looks like a prototypical quarterback, doesn't necessarily mean he is a guy that somebody should spend a high draft pick on because of X, Y, and Z reasons. I don't know. I feel like the teams that typically go after those guys that are kind of like, when you look at the tape, you go, huh? And then you're like, oh, the measurables are just off the chart. It's like those are the teams that are consistently looking for a quarterback. It seems like
yeah,
so like I said, I'm always in the camp of I would rather have a quarterback that knows how to lead, knows how to win, than a quarterback that stands in the pocket at 6'5", has big hands, and can throw the ball 75 yards from his knees. Okay,
guess what?
but can
If he's down in the NFL, if he's on his knees throwing 70 yards,
right?
he's
Can he lead my team to victory? Does he know how to do that? That's why I like C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud has the size. He's got all those intangibles, but he has shown you on tape that he can lead. He can adapt his game to the necessary environment that he is in. He knows how to adjust on the fly. Some of prototypical quarterbacks, they don't show that. And again, I go back to a quarterback that I always thought was never given a fair chance in Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow had an awkward throwing motion. Okay, who cares? Can he lead your team to victory? Is he a good leader in the locker room? Is he what you want in a quarterback as a person, as a player? Yeah, who cares? He's got a wonky throwing motion. It still gets the ball from point A to point B accurately, right? So, I don't know. I can stand on a soapbox all day and scream that, and I don't think anybody's going to listen.